Okay, it should be all set. Thank you.
All to order.
Yep. Do you have an agenda? Okay, so you want to recognize the mayor now?
Sure. Mayor is at the meeting today and has indicated he would like to say a few words. Welcome, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Glad to see you guys here. A little bit of a rainy, cold night. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. I was talking to our town attorney, Jeff Tanaka. He wanted to be here tonight just to be part of your discussion from what I see on your agenda. Some recommendations about changing the policy or updating it, whatever. So he unfortunately was tied up in another hearing in another town that he had to take care of. So I just wanted to, say that he's, will stand by, willing to help you through your discussions, whatever changes you might want to make or interested in making. Certainly, I think the policy is a couple of years old now, maybe. So we certainly, we on the council know it will ultimately come to us, whatever your recommendations are. We appreciate you looking at the policy, and if you tweak it, if you add some things or clean it up or whatever you want to do to it, we look forward to seeing those changes, to us. And like I said, Jeff, our town attorney will certainly be happy to help you work with it, whatever recommendations you're thinking about. So just wanted to throw that into the meeting. And thank you.
Great. Thanks very much. Appreciate that.
Appreciate your work too, volunteering like we all do. So never easy. Sometimes it's fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And certainly we would want the town attorney's input on anything that's going to be sent to the council for review, I think. Okay, so number 2 on the agenda is discussion of possible recommendations on changing the ethics policy. I believe at the last meeting we had discussed that the way that the second notice of an indication that someone has not complied with the requirement to get the financial disclosure to the town clerk seems to be a little ambiguous or unfair the way it's written. So that was the purpose of this meeting. Discuss, I think, that particular clause in it. Tweaked or changed or updated. So, other than that, I don't know if you had a chance to review that or have any recommendations. Before today's meeting, the town financial director did weigh in on potential revision to that clause. I don't know if you had the opportunity. But in addition to that email, does anyone have any independent thoughts on this particular clause or the one, I guess, the requirement overall to require a financial disclosure from the particular areas of town, either election or appointment to admissions that are, or to boards that are indicated in the policy. And number 2, if that is, we're going to recommend that remain a requirement, how the, town employees or officials get notice of, non-compliance with this particular clause. And Scott.
Can we first discuss the statement itself, the financial interest statement?
Sure.
Because I did go through everything, and to me, overall, it just seems like it's geared more towards real estate and business. And under question number 3, it says receive at least 10,000 in earnings in the immediate past calendar year. And then of course, you're talking about, spouse, dependent, whatever. I take that as to earnings from a business, a corporation. So if we're going to be requiring that anybody disclose if they have a spouse or a dependent that's a town employee, I don't get that from this question. Maybe we need to add something to that. But I don't know, what is everyone's opinion? I mean, how do you read that statement under question 3? Is that where somebody would indicate that their spouse or dependent is a town employee? This sounds to me it's more geared towards corporation trust partnership, which they're talking about, and 5% equitable interest. So I just wanted to get everybody's thoughts on that. I think if we're going to require somebody to state on a, that their spouse or dependent is a town employee, I think we need to specifically put a question on there about that.
Yeah, I agree with, my interpretation, that's number 3, employer, is that what you're?
Right. Are you interpreting that it's geared towards, a partnership or trust?
Yeah, I don't think that, my reading of it is not particular as to, the town employee.
The town employee, right,
It's asking,
right.
Whoever fills out the form, to include any employer. So if you were recommending that specifically someone discloses if they have a spouse or some other family member that's a town employee.
That could be a conflict of interest.
Yeah, I think that's probably covered in this generally, but certainly doesn't.
Yeah, see, I don't take that from in reading this, and if you're gonna have a bunch of people reading this and interpreting it, I think, I'm saying, it's like, I think we should specifically ask them about a town employee. Because here, it's referring to, like I said, a corporation trust partnership, and then 5% equitable interest and 10,000 in earnings. And then, the last sentence says list all names, for applicable employers, but, I'm relating that to the corporation,
Right.
not a town employee. What does everybody else think?
I thought that this is more where it identifies if there is a potential conflict in the future. So I work for the town because I'm a top employee. I'm supposed to complete this financial statement. And I'm not married, but if my husband had a business that could potentially be doing work for the town, this is where you would disclose it.
Right, under contracts.
Well, also
Yeah.
as an employer, I think,
Right.
too. It's known that I'm a town employee, but it would be where, for example, my family has a farm in Wallingford. If we were selling hay to the town of Berlin, which we don't, then I would disclose this and say that there's, but otherwise, I always put it down that I own the farm, but we don't take in $10,000 or anything like that. We don't do any business with the town of Berlin. But this is where you would disclose it. Is that your understanding of that?
Right.
Okay.
But again, you're talking about a specific business
Mhm.
or potential contract, which is covered
Right.
under 4.
But that's where, yes.
In general,
Mhm.
if someone's a town employee, it could potentially be a conflict of interest. I think we need to specifically ask them that so they could put it down.
If someone,
I mean, in 4, they're asking you to reveal any business, corporation and so forth.
Yeah.
I don't know, that may something maybe the attorney can look at. And
And it may or may not be where there's a contract. But I do agree, Sue, that maybe this could be worded differently, so we get to the meat of the matter rather than all this
Right, yeah,
verbiage.
yeah, like inclusive of, just being a town employee, which may be a conflict of interest. That's the way I took it when I read it, so. Because I was looking through there to see where would they specifically write where there's a spouse or dependent that may, that's a town employee.
So you're
Not with any particular situation that could be a conflict of interest, but Possibly.
Your suggestion is just in order to have sort of be upfront with members of the town, someone serving one of these positions should disclose if their spouse is a town employee.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because if they have to make any decisions that could affect them, then it's on record that they disclosed it. Otherwise, if it's not here, how can they be held responsible for not disclosing it? Right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea. I believe that based on the code of ethics, someone in that position has the responsibility to disclose themselves before they weigh in on a matter where
Right.
where it may affect their financial interest.
Yeah, they have enough common sense.
Yeah, pursuant to the code though,
Mhm.
it has to meet the definition of conflict of interest or financial interest.
Right.
By the definition of the code, as we all know.
Mhm.
But that's not a.
Yeah, I'm
That's
just
not-
saying that the technical disclosure of it being in writing, if we're gonna hold somebody responsible to have to disclose it, then I think it should be clearly stated. And I don't, from reading number 3, that's what I don't get, or any of the other questions. I don't get that
Yeah, you're right.
impression of just a town employee. It's all geared towards real estate and financial stuff.
Right, I agree with that, doesn't require someone to disclose it to their spouse or someone else.
It's just an employee.
Kevin, when you're speaking, could you take your mask off or just drop it? Other times leave it on, but you have a soft voice and now we have the blower that just ended. Thank you.
So what I think the finance director is recommending is that the disclosure of financial interest that has to be submitted is totally abolished at all. That's his recommendation.
Okay.
And what I would want to know before we make any recommendation to the town council on that is, does that affect what we accomplished with the financial audit a few years back when we adopted this disclosure policy? And I think Kevin Delaney has to weigh in on that. He's in that position now that Jim Wren was in, who advised us on, that was part of the audit of the town at the time. And whoever he was dealing with, I think, recommended that a disclosure policy be put in place. My guess is that was to adhere to some standard that, would help the town pass the audit. I don't know that, that's just a guess, so I would want, Kevin Delaney to weigh in on that before we make that recommendation to the town council. Hey, we think you should waive the disclosure requirement, but is that gonna somehow adversely affect the town status? I don't know that.
Maybe it's just my interpretation, but even when I was filling it out for myself, I just felt like it was asking you what employers you were working for in order to facilitate making sure that there was no conflict of interest. Was I misinterpreting that?
No, I mean, I think
I mean,
that's,
I think it's just asking, it's just generalized, you, your spouse, or any dependent that's over, a certain age.
yeah, I believe that's my
disclose where they
interpretation
were.
too, and I think Sue is saying that she believes that it should add to it. You should have to disclose whether you're married to a town employee or am I characterizing what you're saying correctly?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But if you're filling it out anyway, you'd be filling it out saying that you're,
Well, not really, because if I filled this out, I would, the way I read it is, if I had somebody that was involved in a corporation or trust or partnership. You know what I'm saying? Because that's what the whole definition is in that paragraph.
and or corporation trust though.
Right. Or partnership. that has 5% equitable interest receives 10,000.
I mean, people can do that just in their general positions. I guess that's why I interpreted it as just a regular employer. Like these other things were kind of and or, like added on.
Well, then I think it should say, or.
Yeah.
Anyone
Like I
that's a
said,
town
it needs to be
employee,
explicit,
yeah,
but yeah,
right.
I think like I said, my interpretation of it when I was filling it out was that any of our employers needed to be put down so that it was disclosed who we work for and I make more than $10,000 a year and 5% interest, so.
Yeah, but the problem is you have so many people interpreting it.
Right, it needs to be clear.
It should
definitely
be
needs to
clear, yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, one of the big issues is we've had pushback. I think the history of this is that every union in town has made it clear that they do not want to comply with this disclosure requirement because of they don't want their members to have to disclose their financial interests, and that might have to be collectively bargained for, whatever the case may be. But when the police union came in front of us, I think this was a couple years ago, I guess, to ask for an exemption from this disclosure requirement, which was recommended to the town council, who ended up adopting that exemption. You know, we asked that I think the town manager at the time get the position of every other union in town. I believe the response was that uniformly they do not want to require their members to comply with this. So my guess is, without knowing, this is just an instinct, is that we asked the town clerk to get us the number of people who are not compliant with this disclosure right now. My guess is that most of them are not union members who that all, because we understand that there's probably some people who just didn't comply for whatever reason. We know this was a tough year with COVID. So the town wasn't, his offices weren't even open for a while. So I think that did negatively impact the amount of disclosures that came into the town clerk. But my guess is that the majority are union personnel, and their leadership might even become, you do not need to comply with this. So that's an issue that, the town's up against, and we have to keep in mind when we make recommendations to the town council. And I think the first thing I would want to know is, because in my opinion, if I was making a recommendation to the town council, we want this to be as limited as possible to carry out the function or the purpose of it, to put town citizens on notice that, hey, this is something, this information you should know, just so it's out there, so that there's there's this sort of air of confidence in what's going on, because they have all the information you need to know what people's interests are. But that should be as limited as possible, in my opinion, to accomplish that goal. And if we didn't have to have any financial statements, disclosures at all, and it still kept the public confidence up as to what was going on in town, and decision makers, what their interests were, I think that would be the best thing overall. I just don't know. One, you may not agree with me, but two, I don't know if that is possible with what went on with the audit. So I think we're going in several different areas here, but where I was starting out with is, should we recommend to the town council that they abolish the need for these disclosures altogether, and we still maintain the public confidence in what's going on, and just meet these disclosure requirements. There, several surrounding towns have similar requirements. I don't know how they deal with the union piece of it. Some towns are more limited. I think I looked at it. It seems a lot more limited than the town of Burling's. The town of West Hartford seems almost identical to ours, so I'm wondering if this was just some canned language that the others had adopted by the finance director. But so those are my general thoughts. I mean, I'd like to know what Sue and Ian and Anne Marie think, as far as, does that make sense that they should be as limited as possible, or do you think more information should be?
And what about the employees that don't live in town? I believe I saw some language somewhere that some of those employees did not want to file the statement of financial interest because they don't live in town.
Yes. So there are a few who have filed, because there's two pieces of paper that are supposed to be filed. The receipt, the exhibit A that says that you have received it, you know, the policy. And then on some people, not everybody, the financial statements are required. And those are listed in the policy as far as who is supposed to submit those. I think if you decide to go ahead, that you want the financial statements to continue to be filed, I think you need to kind of say some language in here that is everybody, you know, that it's listed. And I think it's just, it's a teaching tool, you know. And I think some of my frustration's been that if they don't comply, it's been hard because I don't have any, and it's been from day one with this whole policy, is that it's fine for me to call up Nina and say, Nina, I don't have your financial statement. And you say to me, okay, Kate, I'll get it to you. And then a month later, I look at everything and I realize you still haven't sent it to me. So then I either email you, call you, send it in a note or whatever. And then another month goes by. It's my best bet on getting people to do the Exhibit A, and if needed, this financial statement is when they come in to be sworn in, because they're right there in front of me, and I tell them, just do it now, and I'll take it right in. But sometimes the tracking of it and the follow-up is difficult. And I mean, I guess that's what we have to talk about. Is it going to be where, for example, Sue decides not to give me the financial statements. So I give her the 2 notices, and then I talk to Kevin, and I said, Kevin, you know, Sue hasn't given me financials yet. And then how far do we take this? Where does it go? That's what I think the biggest problem is, and then Kevin forgets to remind me, you know, Sue to do it. And then I'm back to trying to track it all down again, and that whole bit. I think you need to decide how important is the financial statement, and also with acknowledging that you have received the ethics policy. Is it enough that, you know, they sign it once, you know, that they've seen it? And then when the changes occur, I mean, do we want to do it every year? Do you want to do it every other year? Do you know, those are all things that I think you need to talk about. It is, in some ways, we're prepared. I knew that probably tonight we wouldn't make a lot of decisions. So starting tomorrow, Rose knows we've already done a lot of the memos and the letters and everything. So those will start going out tomorrow. But I think it's the follow-up and where you want to go. Financial statement, and this is where I guess maybe at the next meeting, have Kevin Delaney here, if that's what you want, Kevin. And of course, hopefully Jeff D'Onofrio can sit in on that. But
my personal opinion is that if the disclosure requirements could be eliminated and we still, you know, the town still fulfills the purpose of, you know, somehow making sure that there's confidence in the whatever processes are going on in town with these various committees and, you know, employees and agencies, that would be the best bet. Well, the process now is that there's a disclosure requirement. If there's no disclosure, the town clerk follows up with the supervisor. And then if there's still no disclosure, if there's a complaint, this board is supposed to have in, you know, call a hearing to have that employee or town official elected official come in front of this board and explain why they didn't make the disclosure, and then of course there's penalties that are laid out in Board of Ethics policy that we can impose after a hearing. What I think you would see is if that's carried out to the letter, we're gonna have hundreds of these hearings, at least dozens. If there's complaints or if people don't comply, and then there's gonna be butting heads with unions, and there's gonna be litigation. And if that can be avoided, but still keep the public confidence in, you know, that everything's on the up and up in town, that to my sense is the best way to go. You know, maybe there is reasons to have hearings in certain cases to have people come in, and maybe that will, somebody say to themselves, you know what, I really don't want to disclose this, so I'm gonna back out from, you know, whatever committee or elected official I am, and I'm gonna go do something else with my life. You know, the town can fill that position with someone who's willing to make these disclosures, and you know, the members of the town can, you know, have confidence in what's going on in those processes. But I just don't, my hang up right now, and even recommending to the town council that they don't make the disclosure requirements, is based on the history of how this came down. There's a reason that it's in this policy, and there's a reason the auditors wanted it. And I don't know whether that would, again, affect the town status, and then the town council can decide, okay, it's gonna affect our status one way or the other. We either don't care, and we say get rid of the disclosure policy, or that matters a lot to us. And we want this disclosure policy. In Board of Ethics, you were put on this board to handle this, so go do it. So I just want to make sure we get as much information as possible so that we can make, you know, our best recommendation to the town council who then make a decision on this. At the very least, I think we all know the notification process that the town clerk has to go through needs to be adjusted, because there's really no teeth to it right now. There's no real, I think that second notice requirement would have to become much more formal. You know, it wouldn't just be like a phone call to the mayor to say, Mr. Mayor, 3 of your council members have not made any disclosure yet. It would be a more formal process, at least, you know, a letter in writing would be my recommendation. And if there's no compliance with that, we get into the hearing process. I think none of us want to be pulling people out of these hearings. Maybe just getting that second letter would be enough for people to make the required disclosure. Maybe not. And again, that's why he says after I don't think it's our desire to be pulling people in by the dozens to say, why didn't you file this disclosure? Oh, you're unlimited. So I mean, those are my general thoughts on the process.
I think it's pretty apparent that we need to speak with Kevin Delaney to find out why this was done to begin with.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, so I mean, to even have any further discussion on it until after we get his input.
Do we want to have a motion to table this issue until Mr. Delaney and Attorney D'Onofrio can be at the meeting?
Yeah, I don't think you need the motion to table. We're fine with that,
Okay.
all right? Are you gonna talk about other parts of the policy, or you're gonna wait?
Certainly, that's open for discussion. I don't have any other recommendations. I think this was the sort of.
If I may, the town manager brought to my attention that, and Arosh, if you want to weigh in on this, on the Exhibit A, there's times when we get pushed back on this also, especially from the union people will not sign Exhibit A. The thought is that if the language of, and I agree to abide by the requirements of this policy is removed. So it only says, I, Catherine Wall, acknowledge that I received a copy of the town of Berlin's ethics policy on November 17th. And let it go with that. Arosh, do you want to say anything about that?
He's muted.
Yeah, I didn't know if he was unmuted. So.
Frozen.
Okay, he's set.
It's like trying to get into Fort Knox. Very difficult to unmute myself here. So, so two things. We haven't had a formal agreement. All these things took place before I got here, but I spoke with our HR director, Denise Parsons, and it appears that some unions would agree to acknowledge that they received a copy of the town of Berlin ethics policy, but they are refusing to agree to abide by the requirements of the policy. Having said that, two things come to my mind. One is, in this electronic age, do you really need their acknowledgement? We email it, that's a record that you received it. So that's one. And the second one is, this is a conversation we need to have with Corporation Counsel Jeff D'Onofrio. When I spoke with him, he said it really doesn't matter if they acknowledge it or not. If they violate anything in the ethics policy, you can take action. So, there are two ways we can approach it. We can try to get them on board and come up with some language that would please all four unions, or to say, this is our ethics policy, we're sending it to you, and that'll be an electronic record that they received it. And it is, our intent that if you follow it, if you don't follow it, we'll still can hold you accountable as employee of the town. So this was Jeff's advice, but I don't want to speak for him. Perhaps the next meeting we ought to have him, share his advice with the ethics board and see where we want to go with it.
Are you referring to just distribution of the Board of or the Code of Ethics? Is that what you're referring to?
It would be the ethics policy.
Yes.
Okay.
Ethics policy, right.
Okay, so yeah, that makes sense. If there's gonna be some record, which I guess can be, it may not be contested. I guess somebody could come to the attorney and say, yeah, you sent the email. But and that's all good. That's all good advice. You're probably right on the money with that. I don't think that does. That doesn't address the financial disclosure. That's a separate issue. So,
Yeah.
Respond.
One more thing I would add about the financial disclosure. We probably want to have it not just town of Berlin, regardless of whether they live in the town or own a partnership or interest even outside, because we do business with a lot of different entities all over the state and sometimes out of state. So if you're going to do it, it should be not just town of Berlin, everything else too, because that happens. We put an RFP out and there are folks from all over the state and out of state responding to it. So, that's the only way we are going to know if they have a business interest with a group that we are going to conduct business.
And to your point, as far as someone getting the policy, whether they disclose what their interests are or not, they still have an obligation to adhere to the code of ethics. So it's their obligation to disclose and so any financial interest or financial interest that would rise to a conflict of interest if they're weighing whether they disclose it in written policy or not. That's what the code requires.
Yes.
Did you have anything else to add on that, Dave? Okay.
No, I agree with you.
Sue or Nina, any other thoughts on that particular issue?
Which issue? Financial statement?
Yeah,
No, I think
That, table that until we get more information.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm conflicted, you know, I don't think it's necessarily town employees, I think it's more businesses, but, you know, like if you can, financially gain, like, let's say if I own a building in town and I'm an employee, you know, that's how I'm interpreting it. That
okay,
I can financially, value my property better. Or,
Nina, can you, when you're speaking, drop your mask because you're soft spoken too? And again, the blower.
a little more, information on why this paragraph is written.
okay. Anne Marie, do you have anything to add as far as any of these topics, whether disclosure should be?
Like I said, I agree with you. I feel like we need to find out how this is gonna affect the town in the first place. Like, was it something that was put in it originally because we weren't meeting a certain standard? So I think we need to find that out.
Mhm.
And if that's the case, if it's not necessarily needed, I mean, like I said, we're not getting the unions aren't doing, they're not filling them out. So we have to figure out either we're gonna do it for everyone or we withhold just from the unions. And can we do that? Because I mean, is that fair and equitable, or you leave out some and make others put forth their information?
Yeah, I agree, and I think it comes down to you know, from my reading of this and interpretation, is this code is in effect so the public has confidence in the way the town operates, and that's an issue for the town council, whether they think certain you know, groups should be carved out of that process or not, and we certainly can make recommendations.
Right.
Do you know, Kate, when I know you know, when does the next sort of wave of these have to be coming early next year?
December 1st.
December 1, okay.
So I'm gonna go ahead with the policy as written right now. And then whatever happens, happens, but, Arosh, I work with him as far as what he sends out. We're all set to start mailing it out to all the boards and commission members. And, we'll take it from there.
Okay, and what do you, if we put this on the agenda for our next meeting, when do you anticipate that could occur? I know you have to get the schedules of other people, but could it happen in November? I'm sorry, December.
I don't think so.
No.
So you have to make recommendations or come up with what you'd like to have happen. So you want to have at least one more meeting with Jeff, so Jeff D'Onofrio and Kevin Delaney can come.
Yes.
And then whatever your recommendations are, those will have to go to the council. The council is meeting November 24th next week. And then also on December 15th. They have one meeting right now.
Okay, and do you think there's a chance we could get in the next meeting with the town attorney and the town finance director before the 15th?
Before the 15th, yes. I can reach out to both of them tomorrow. If you guys can give me some dates that you are comfortable with, then I can then reach out to, and it would be probably better to meet that first week of December because of language has to be drafted and the corporation council has to be comfortable with everything. And then the Friday before the council meeting is when the packet goes out to the town council. So they have the opportunity to review it for that December 15th meeting. So that's going to backtrack it to, excuse me, So December 15th, that means that I have to send everything out on December 11th. And like I said, I'll need a couple of dates, but also Corporation Council needs the time to draft the information or the recommendations or anything along those lines.
Okay, and I mean, I don't think it's something we have to jam through. If
Right.
it's not ready for December 15th, it's not ready.
Correct.
I'd like to ask the town attorney whether there's any, I guess, legal way or allowable way to postpone the town sending out all these.
I don't want to get in trouble anymore.
No.
I sending it out. I don't like getting yelled at. Even when you yell at me nicely.
Okay, I mean, he may be able to weigh in on that though.
You know, I mean, if he says, personally, because I am upset about the whole thing. I want to send everything out. If you tell me after the December meeting, don't worry about collecting it, that's fine. But right now, the policies is there. So I want to do what I'm supposed to do. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's not only your opinion, I think that's an accurate way to interpret this, this is what's required presently.
Right.
And there's the only issue is whether that can be, delayed or not legally. I think
Okay.
that's the right word.
I see what you're saying. Rose, did you want to say something? Your mic went off. Okay.
So I have a question. When you're employed by the town, is that disclosed that, once you're hired, that you have to file this Berlin's, financial interest?
Not when I was hired, because I've been here longer than Dirk. But it is when the new employee sits down with the HR director, Denise Parsons. She does give them the policy, the Exhibit A, and if needed, the financial statements. So that's part of their, when they sit down and they get all the information from the town employer. And that's usually when they complete everything because they want the job and they want to do it. And then they find out, when they go back to when they start in their office and they join the union, is that the union says, don't do that.
Okay.
It's definitely a difficult issue because I think we all can see that there's definitely some positions in town that we want to know what, interests they have, if they have certain purchasing ability. It's just keeps things at the level. Or at least it gives a perception that things are on the level, which is the whole point of this. But then again, on the other hand, there is a competing interest that someone might be a member of the union and their leadership, for whatever reasons, don't want these type of disclosures, being forced to be made for their members. And they collectively bargain these things, and that's all part of it. That we've heard in the past. So this is certainly a hairy issue. It's not something that, I think we're striving to do the right thing, and we'll keep hacking away at this to make recommendations, but it's not a quick, easy answer to how to best resolve this. So. Okay, so unless anyone wants to add anything else, we'll set up another meeting with the town clerk when, the town attorney and the finance director can attend and give us some guidance on the questions we have.
Do you want to make a motion to adjourn and then we'll talk about meeting dates, or is there other things that you want to talk about?
I think we could, at the very least, we'll just, if someone wants to make a motion for number 3 to approve the minutes of our last meeting, October 14th, 2020, we can accomplish that, and then.
Oh, that's right, the minutes.
And then we can adjourn, set up at least get Kate our dates.
I guess I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for October 14, 2020 meeting. This is Sue speaking.
I second the motion. This is Nina speaking.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that was the last agenda item, the approval of these minutes. Does anyone, Anne Marie, Sue, or Nina want to add anything else before we adjourn?
No.
Someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that. This is Sue.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, with that, our meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dana.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you.
Yeah.
Take care. Take care. Have a good night.
Short and sweet, I like this.